Gen Z Dogs Breaking Bark, written by Valentin Vishnyakov, published by Nfynia Publishing. Chapter 1, The Dog Dealer. The day barely began when the shit hit the fan. Chip was the first to notice something was wrong when he wandered into the kitchen and found the pantry door cracked open, and a small bag of dog treats ripped apart on the floor. Guys? Chip called out, nudging the remains of the bag with his paw. We've got a problem here. Lola, who'd spent most of the night passed out on the couch, groaned as she rolled over. Chip, if this is another one of your "I'm starving" bullshit excuses, I swear to, I didn't eat them. Chip barked. I mean, I would've, but someone beat me to it. Midnight, already wide awake and on high alert as always, padded over, her eyes narrowing as she inspected the scene. The shredded bag, the crumbs scattered across the floor. We've got a thief. Thief? Dexter poked his head out from behind a stack of pillows. Oh fuck no. We're being robbed. Bella snorted. If they were here to rob us, they'd have taken something that matters. Like Lola's fucking booze stash. Lola shot her a death glare. Hey. Don't joke about that. Wait, shit, what if they did? She bolted to her secret cabinet, rummaging through the bottles. Okay, we're good. No one touches my babies. Midnight ignored her and turned to Chip. Was the door open when you came in? Chip shook his head. Nope. Just the pantry door. But get this, it smells off. Not dog. Definitely not a dog. Dexter's ears flattened. Oh God, it's the raccoons again, isn't it? Echo, who had been lying in the corner half asleep, perked up at the word raccoons. Raccoons? Where? No raccoons, Midnight snapped. But something's been here. Chip sniffed the air again, his nose wrinkling in disgust. It's faint, but yeah, it's like something chemical. Weirdly familiar. Midnight's eyes narrowed. We've got a mystery on our paws. Everyone split up and look for clues. If someone's sneaking into our shit, we need to nail them. They turned the house upside down, pawing through every corner. Dexter kept getting distracted by his own reflection in shiny surfaces, while Lola stumbled on a half-eaten slice of pizza she didn't even remember ordering. Just as Midnight was about to lose her patience, Bella called out from the backyard. Guys! I found something. The group rushed outside, where Bella was standing near the fence, her nose low to the ground. It smells strong over here, Bella said, pointing her snout toward a patch of dirt. Like, really strong. Chip padded over and sniffed the spot. Whoa. Yeah. That's the same scent from inside. What the hell is it? Midnight sniffed the air, her brow furrowing. The smell was unmistakable now, chemical, sharp, and wrong. She'd smelled it before, but couldn't place it. Wait, Echo suddenly said, his eyes widening. I know that smell. They all turned to him. It's meth. Silence. What? Lola laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Meth? Are you fucking serious? Echo nodded grimly. Trust me. I know what it smells like. I had a buddy back in the day who got mixed up with some shady shit. It always starts small. They sneak in, steal your treats, and before you know it, boom, they've got a whole meth lab set up in your backyard. Dexter's eyes went wide. Oh no. Oh no, no. We're gonna get raided, aren't we? The dog catchers are gonna swoop in, and we're all gonna end up in fucking doggy prison. Midnight's face hardened. Not if we catch them first. Chip blinked, still processing what Echo had said. So, let me get this straight. Someone's using our house as a front for their drug operation. Like. Barking bad? Lola snorted. Breaking bark. Walter Dog. Jesse Paws man. Midnight rolled her eyes. Call it whatever you want, but we need to shut this shit down before it gets worse. Echo, you seem to know the most about this. What do we do? Echo straightened up, his playful demeanor gone. We stake out the yard. Whoever's doing this will be back soon. They always come back. And when they do, we'll be ready. As the sun started to rise, the dogs took their positions around the yard, hidden in bushes and behind trees. Chip, armed with a squeaky toy he swore was for distraction purposes, crouched behind a flower pot. Lola leaned against the fence, casually sipping from a bottle of gin she'd snuck out. Bella and Midnight stayed low in the tall grass, their eyes locked on the patch where the scent was strongest. Echo was on edge. He'd seen shit like this before, and he knew the kind of dogs that got involved. They weren't the kind you fucked with lightly. Stay sharp, he muttered. These bastards are fast and sneaky. But we'll catch them. Hours crawled by with no sign of movement. Dexter started to doze off, his head resting on a pile of leaves. Chip chewed on a stick to pass the time. Just when they were ready to call it quits, a rustling noise came from the far corner of the yard. Midnight's ears perked up. Shoo! Get ready. Out of the bushes emerged a squirrel. A fat, twitchy squirrel with a tiny backpack slung over its shoulder. The group watched in stunned silence as the squirrel scurried toward the dirt patch, completely oblivious to the dogs watching it. Lola was the first to speak. Is that a meth squirrel? Chip's jaw dropped. No fucking way. Squirrels are the dealers. Echo growled low. I knew it. Little bastards are always involved in this shit. The squirrel dug into the dirt, pulling out a small baggie filled with a suspicious-looking powder. It stuffed the bag into its backpack and darted toward the fence. Before it could escape, Midnight leapt out of the bushes, teeth bared. Gotcha. The squirrel froze, eyes wide with terror. Who the fuck are you working for? Midnight snarled, her face inches from the squirrel's. The squirrel squeaked in panic, dropping its backpack and backing away. I'm just a runner, I swear. I don't know the boss, I just do the drop-offs. Lola swaggered over, her breath reeking of gin. Oh, you're gonna tell us everything, you little shit. Everything. And so, the dogs had their first lead in the mystery of the meth-running squirrels. But the deeper they dug, the more they realized this operation went all the way to the top. And they were just getting started. Chapter 2, The Heisenberg Connection. The squirrel, still trembling under Midnight's unforgiving glare, tried to inch away. But there was no escape. Midnight had her paw planted firmly on the ground, blocking his path. Chip sidled up to the scene, his eyes wide with excitement. Dude, this is like a real-life crime drama. We've got the suspect cornered and everything. Lola, still swaying slightly from the gin she'd been nursing all night, wagged a paw in the squirrel's direction. Spill it, little bastard. Who's your supplier? And don't give me that I'm just a runner bullshit again. Echo stepped forward, voice low and dripping with menace. You don't want to end up like the last guy who crossed me. Let's just say he's not dealing treats anymore. The squirrel gulped, his trembling worse than ever. I don't know his name. I swear. They just call him Heisenberg. Bella snorted. Heisenberg? Are you fucking serious? What is this, a bad TV drama? Dexter, who had been hiding in the corner, peeked out, eyes wide. Heisenberg. He's the kingpin, isn't he? The one running all the meth squirrels around here. Lola waved a paw dismissively. Of course he is. Every drug ring has some idiot with a stupid name in charge. It's a rule. Midnight's gaze stayed locked on the squirrel. Where can we find him? The squirrel squirmed under her paw. I don't know. I swear I don't know. They just give me the packages and tell me where to drop them. I've never met him. Echo's growl deepened. You better not be lying, or you'll wish you were back in that dumpster with the raccoons. Chip scratched his head, raising a paw thoughtfully. Wait. So, if this Heisenberg dude's the one pulling all the strings, and all these squirrels are his little drug mules, how the hell do we flush him out? Bella grinned, a mischievous glint in her eye. Simple. We do what any good crew of underdogs would do. Lola burped, her grin matching Bella's. We go undercover. Midnight tilted her head. Undercover? We're not exactly subtle. Bella raised an eyebrow. Oh, we're not gonna be subtle. We're gonna play them at their own game. Hours later, the crew was huddled in the living room, piecing together their plan. Midnight paced back and forth, laser-focused, while Dexter chewed nervously on his paw. Echo stood at the window, scanning the yard like a sniper on watch, and Chip. Well, Chip had his sunglasses on. Midnight stopped mid-stride, staring at him. Chip, what the fuck are you doing? Chip grinned, tail wagging. What? You said we're going undercover. I'm just getting into character. Bella sighed. That's not what she meant, genius. Echo, still watching the yard, growled. We need to get serious. If we're going after Heisenberg, we can't fuck this up. Lola, curled up in the corner with another drink, raised her paw. I've got an idea. We set up our own meth operation. Silence. Midnight blinked. Excuse me. Lola smirked. Hear me out. We set up a fake meth lab. Spread the word that there's a new player in town. If Heisenberg's the kingpin, he won't like the competition. He'll come to us. Dexter's eyes widened. That's actually kind of brilliant. Bella nodded, her grin growing. Yeah, but we've gotta make it look legit. Real Breaking Bad shit. Chip scratched his head. But how are we supposed to make meth? I mean, I barely know how to make toast. Echo stepped forward, his voice dark. Leave that to me. I know a guy. Midnight's eyebrow shot up. A guy? Echo nodded. Yeah. He owes me a favor. Knows how to set up a lab, at least a fake one. Lola smirked, finishing off her drink. Well, looks like we've got ourselves a plan. The next morning, the crew gathered in the backyard. Echo's guy had arrived, a scruffy cocker spaniel named Max, surrounded by piles of glass beakers, tubes, and a bunch of other questionable shit. This is Max, Echo said, nodding at the spaniel. He's well, rough around the edges, but he knows what he's doing. Max waved a paw lazily. Yeah. You wanna set up a fake lab? No problem. I've done this before, don't ask where. Chip wandered over, sniffing one of the beakers. So, what's all this stuff supposed to do? Max shrugged. Nothing, really. But it looks legit, right? That's what matters. Lola raised an eyebrow. And you're sure this will draw Heisenberg out? Max nodded. Oh yeah. Once word gets out that there's a new player in town, he'll come sniffing around. Trust me. By the time the sun started setting, the backyard looked like a full-blown meth operation. Glass beakers, burners, and random chemicals were scattered everywhere. It was a mess, but a convincing mess. Midnight stood at the edge of the yard, her eyes scanning the setup. Now we wait. Chip, still rocking his sunglasses, grinned. This is gonna be awesome. Bella smirked. Or it's gonna blow up in our faces. Dexter whimpered. I'm betting on option 2. And so, the stage was set. The dogs had become fake drug dealers overnight. All they could do now was wait for Heisenberg to take the bait. Little did they know, Heisenberg was already watching. And he was closer than they thought. Chapter 3, Breaking Badly. The night crept in, casting long shadows across the backyard. Their fake meth lab glowed under the flicker of a single hanging bulb, like a warning sign on the edge of disaster. The air was thick with tension and the underlying fear that one wrong move could turn this whole charade into a very real catastrophe. Max, the scruffy cocker spaniel with a past no one dared to ask about, stepped back and admired his handiwork. Yup. All set. This thing's as legit as it's gonna get without any real meth. You dogs ready to roll? Lola hiccuped and waved a paw in his direction. Maxie, babe, I was born ready. Let's show these squirrel-ass tweakers who's in charge. She swayed slightly, her drink sloshing but never spilling, a testament to her experience. Chip, adjusting his sunglasses, gave a cocky grin. I'm just saying, the shades really sell the whole Breaking Bad vibe. I'm practically the dog version of Walter White right now. Bella rolled her eyes. Chip, you look less like a drug lord and more like the dipshit who gets killed in the first 5 minutes of a shitty action flick. Chip shrugged, still leaning against a barrel filled with God knows what. Haters gonna hate. I'm living the dream, babe. Midnight, dead serious as always, paced back and forth in front of the crew. Listen, the lab's set. All we can do now is wait for Heisenberg's crew to show up. When they do, remember, act cool, don't panic, and do not fuck this up. Dexter, trembling like a chihuahua at a thunderstorm, stammered, "See cool? We're pretending to be fucking meth dealers. This is crazy." Lola draped an arm lazily over Dexter's shoulder. Sweetie, embrace the fear. It'll give you that, wildcard, unpredictable, edge. And if you piss yourself, it might actually throw them off. Suddenly, Echo, who had been standing sentinel by the fence, stiffened. His nose twitched as he sniffed the air. They're coming. The crew went silent. Sure enough, shadows began to creep along the edges of the yard. The sound of small claws scratching would echoed through the darkness. Moments later, several squirrels emerged from the gloom, their beady eyes darting from one dog to the next. Leading the pack was a bigger, meaner-looking squirrel with patchy fur, a scarred face, and a tooth chipped in a way that made him look like he could gnaw through steel. "Who's in charge here?" the lead squirrel growled, his voice as rough as his appearance. Lola, tipsy but in control, swaggered forward. "That'd be me, Slick. And before you ask, no, we don't do retail, only wholesale. So, are you here to do business or just hoping to catch a tan under our lights?" Chip slid up next to her, adjusting his sunglasses. "Yeah, this is a professional operation, man. No bullshit." The squirrel squinted at Chip. "You look like a goddamn idiot." Chip gasped, looking genuinely offended. "That's just uncalled for." Max, sensing the rising tension, stepped in quickly. "All right, everybody chill. This is a legit operation. We don't want trouble, we just want a piece of the market. Surely, there's enough for all of us." The lead squirrel gave Max a cold look before turning his gaze back to the lab. "Heisenberg doesn't like competition. But honestly, you mutts don't look like much of a threat." Midnight stepped forward, their eyes hard and cold. Looks can be deceiving. The squirrel's eyes flicked to them, and for a brief moment, something like unease crossed his face. Midnight had that effect. They were the kind of dog that could kill you with a look. "Heisenberg has eyes everywhere," the squirrel warned, his voice low. "If you keep stepping into his territory, things are gonna get messy." Lola flashed a feral grin. "Messy? Oh, darling, we invented messy." Dexter, ever the voice of inconvenient truth, squeaked, "Technically, raccoons did." Bella smacked him lightly across the back of the head. "Not the time, Dex. From the shadows, Echo's voice growled out, low and dangerous. Tell Heisenberg we're not afraid of him. He either works with us or he tries to stop us. His choice. The lead squirrel bristled at the challenge. But before he could respond, a loud crash echoed from the side of the yard. Everyone froze, eyes snapping toward the sound. A garbage can had been knocked over, and from behind it crawled a raccoon. But this wasn't just any raccoon, it was massive, scarred, and missing an ear. Its fur was matted and filthy, and it had the kind of eyes that said it had been through hell and was ready to send you there too. Echo's eyes widened in horror. No. No, it can't be. The raccoon locked eyes with Echo, hissing, baring its crooked teeth. Echo took a step back, his tough guy persona crumbling. I thought you were dead. I thought. The raccoon hissed louder, a low growl rumbling in its chest. Echo's resolve broke. It's him. It's the one from the dumpster. The raccoon that jumped me. Chip, barely concealing a laugh, looked over. Dude, it's a raccoon. Get it together. But Echo was shaking now, backing up behind the others. No, you don't understand. That thing. That monster is the reason I'm afraid of the dark. He's the goddamn devil. The lead squirrel, watching the scene unfold, suddenly burst into laughter. You're scared of a raccoon? Oh, this is too fucking good. Midnight glared at him, cutting through his laughter. Laugh all you want, but we're still standing. The lead squirrel wiped a tear from his eye, shaking his head. I'm not laughing at you, sweetheart. I'm laughing because you idiots have no idea what's coming. And with that cryptic warning, the squirrels turned and scampered back into the darkness, leaving the dog standing there, Echo still shaking behind them. Bella glanced at Echo, half amused, half pitying. So. You want to talk about it? Echo shook his head, his voice hollow. No. No, I really don't. Midnight sighed, all business again. We've got a bigger problem now. Heisenberg knows we're here. Lola licked her lips, her eyes gleaming with excitement. Good. Let him come. I've been waiting for a fight. Chip adjusted his sunglasses with a cocky smirk. Hell yeah, bring it on. Dexter, trembling, whimpered, I vote we run away and hide. Bella rolled her eyes. That's not how this works, Dex. Midnight nodded. No. It's not. We started something here, and we're going to finish it. One way or another. As the crew steeled themselves for the storm that was sure to come, Echo stood off to the side, still haunted by the raccoon's glare. He knew deep down, if this war escalated, it wasn't just Heisenberg he'd have to face. It was his own goddamn fear. Chapter 4, The Raccoon Reckoning. The night was dead silent after the squirrels left, like the world was holding its breath. The dogs huddled together around their fake meth lab, pretending everything was under control, but the tension in the air was so thick you could bite into it. Echo was still trembling, curled up in the corner like he'd seen a ghost. Chip, feeling a little bad for him, patted over and nudged him with his paw. Hey, man, you're gonna be alright. It's just a raccoon. Echo shot him a look colder than a grave. Just a raccoon. That thing nearly ripped my face off hang as a poster. Dexter, nervously gnawing on a piece of wood, piped up, he does kinda have a point. That raccoon looked unhinged. Lola swaggered over, a bit more sober but still with her usual swagger. Look, we've all got our fears. Echo's just happens to be homicidal trash pandas. No big deal. We've all been there. Bella snorted. Speak for yourself, Lola. My only fear is running out of wine. Midnight, who had been pacing back and forth, finally turned to face the group. All right, enough. We have bigger problems than raccoons. Heisenberg knows we're on his turf. We need to be ready for whatever he's sending our way. Chip leaned back against the table, acting nonchalant. I'm not worried. What's the worst he's gonna do? Send a bunch of meth-addled squirrels after us? Please. Max, fiddling with a chemical vat, turned to face them. You're underestimating Heisenberg. The guy's a fucking legend. He runs half the crime in this city. If he wants us gone, you better believe we'll know it. Lola cracked her knuckles. Then let's be ready. I didn't show up here to play nice. Echo, still visibly shaken, stood up slowly. I'm not afraid of Heisenberg. But that raccoon. That thing is pure fucking evil. Midnight nodded at him. You're gonna have to face that fear sooner or later, Echo. We've all got demons. As the words left their mouth, the ground started to rumble. At first, it was subtle, a low tremor, but then it grew into a full-blown shake. The dogs looked around in confusion, ears pricked up. What the hell is that? Dexter squeaked, his eyes wide with terror. Max sprinted to the edge of the yard and peered over the fence. His jaw dropped. You've gotta be kidding me. One by one, the others joined him. Their jaws dropped too. Marching toward the yard, like something straight out of a nightmare, was an army of raccoons, dozens, maybe hundreds, led by none other than the one-eared monster that had haunted Echo. But this time, they weren't alone. Every raccoon wore a tiny leather jacket, chains dangling off their necks, some with mohawks. Leading them, the one-eared raccoon was perched on the back of a Rottweiler, looking like a deranged warlord. Lola burst out laughing. Well, shit, this just got interesting. Chip's sunglasses nearly slid off his face as he leaned over the fence, staring in awe. Are those raccoons in leather jackets? Indeed, they were. The raccoon army wasn't just your average dumpster divers. These little bastards had gone full Mad Max. Echo's legs buckled, and he slumped against the fence. This is my worst nightmare come to life. Midnight, ever the strategist, turned to the group. Alright, we need a plan, and we need it fast. There's no way we're taking them all head on. Lola stretched her neck with a crack. I say we go out there and show them what happens when you mess with Gen Z dogs. Dexter raised his paw, his voice shaking. I vote for running away and hiding. Again. Bella, sipping casually from her flask, nodded. I'm with Lola. Let's tear these furballs apart. Max turned to Midnight, worry etched on his face. We can't just charge in. They've got numbers. And leather jackets. We need a strategy. Chip pushed his sunglasses back up, stepping forward with a confident grin. Don't worry. I've got a plan. Midnight squinted at him. This better not be one of your half-baked schemes, Chip. He shrugged. Trust me, this one's solid gold. Chip led them back to the meth lab, where he started gathering chemicals, wires, and random junk. Max watched in horror and fascination as Chip began to MacGyver. Something. What the hell are you doing? Max asked, barely hiding his concern. Chip winked. Making a bomb. Lola's eyes lit up. Now that's what I'm talking about. Dexter whimpered, his voice quivering. I don't like this plan. I really don't like this plan. Bella leaned back, sipping her drink. I'm just here for the fireworks. As Chip continued working on his bomb, Midnight and Max huddled, planning their next moves. We'll need to lure them into a trap, Midnight said. Once they're in position, Chip blows them sky high. We take out as many as we can at once. Max nodded. And the ones left standing? Midnight's eyes darkened. We finished the job. No survivors. By the time Chip finished his creation, the raccoon army was nearly on their doorstep. The dogs took their positions, hiding in the shadows, watching as the swarm of raccoons and their Rottweiler-mounted leader rolled in like a street gang. Echo stood next to Chip, trembling but resolute. He wasn't about to let that one-eared raccoon haunt him anymore. The raccoon leader raised a paw, signaling his troops to stop. He grinned, baring his jagged teeth. "You must think you can stand against us. Heisenberg owns this town. You're nothing." Lola stepped out from the shadows, cracking her knuckles. "We're about to show you what nothing looks like." The leader snarled. "You're dead." Lola smirked. "Ladies first." And then, chaos erupted. The raccoons charged, and the dogs sprang into action. Chip hit the detonator, and the makeshift bomb exploded with a deafening boom. The yard filled with smoke as raccoons flew in every direction. Leather jackets were sent spinning through the air like shrapnel. Max and Midnight led the charge, tearing through raccoons with military precision. Lola and Bella followed, dishing out punishment with a wild, reckless energy. Meanwhile, Dexter ran around in circles, screaming. But Echo had only one target, the one-eared raccoon. As the smoke cleared, the two stood face to face. The raccoon, still perched on his Rottweiler, snarled down at Echo. "You've got guts, pup, but you're not gonna make it out of here alive." Echo's legs shook, but he held his ground. "I'm not scared of you anymore." The raccoon hissed, leaping off the Rottweiler's back. "You should be." With a roar, the two charged at each other, the battle for Echo's soul, and the fate of the backyard, beginning in earnest. Chapter 5, Midnight's Gambit. The yard was a wasteland after the midnight rumble. Smoke still curled up from the debris, and the remnants of Chip's homemade bomb were scattered like confetti from a disaster. The raccoon army had taken a hit, but the battle was far from won. The dogs regrouped, adrenaline still buzzing in their veins. Midnight paced the yard, scanning the carnage with a mix of grim satisfaction and unspoken worry. The one-eared raccoon leader and a few of his henchmen had slipped away, leaving behind chaos and blood. Echo stood with the group, still trembling, but holding it together. Chip wiped the sweat from his brow, adjusting his ever-present sunglasses. "Well, that went better than I thought." "Better than expected?" Lola snapped, kicking a broken piece of debris. "That was supposed to be a decisive victory, not a goddamn mess." Bella, sipping a freshly mixed drink, raised an eyebrow. "It wasn't a cakewalk, but we're still alive. Could have gone worse." Midnight stopped pacing and faced the group. "This isn't over. Heisenberg's not the kind to take a loss lightly. He'll come back harder, and when he does, we need to be ready." Echo, still jittery, tried to focus. "So what's the plan? We can't just sit here and wait for him to come at us again." Midnight nodded, their eyes sharp. "Exactly. We can't stay on defense forever. If we don't take the fight to Heisenberg, he'll hit us when we least expect it, and next time, we might not walk away." Dexter, still twitching nervously, chimed in. "But how do we do that? Heisenberg's got the numbers, the territory. We're just us." Midnight's eyes narrowed, gears turning in their head. "We need to go on the offensive. Strike before he does. But first, we need intel. We need to find out where he's hiding." Chip raised an eyebrow, smirking slightly. "And let me guess, you've got a plan for that too?" Midnight gave a small nod. "I do. But it's going to be risky. We'll need to gather resources, weapons, and track him down. This is all or nothing." Max, who had been inspecting what was left of the chemical vats, finally joined the conversation. "What kind of resources are we talking about? Because we're pretty tapped out here." Midnight's gaze flicked toward Max. "Supplies, firepower, anything that can give us an edge. Heisenberg's got the manpower, but we've got to outthink him. And we need to find where his operation is based." Lola cracked her knuckles, the promise of violence lighting up her eyes. I'm in. I didn't come here to sit on my ass. Let's find him and burn this whole thing down. Bella, swirling her drink thoughtfully, gave Midnight a skeptical glance. Okay, but how do we track down a mob boss who's probably hiding underground with a crew of murderous raccoons? Midnight grinned, that familiar glint of danger in their eyes. We don't need to track him directly. Heisenberg's a kingpin, he's pissed off plenty of people, made a lot of enemies. We follow the trail of destruction he's left behind. Chip's smirk grew wider. So we play detective, huh? Find the bodies, shake the trees, see what falls out. Exactly, Midnight said. We'll follow the leads and see where they take us. Heisenberg can't hide from us forever. Echo, still rattled, spoke up, his voice barely steady. And what if we run into more of his army? More raccoons? Or worse? Midnight's gaze softened for a moment. We'll handle it. Together. We've faced worse odds and come out on top. This won't be any different. Dexter gulped, glancing around at the group. I just hope we're not biting off more than we can chew. Midnight's expression hardened again. We don't have a choice. If we don't take Heisenberg down, he'll come after us, and it won't be pretty. We strike first, and we finish this. The group exchanged looks. They all knew the risks. Midnight's plan wasn't perfect, but it was their best shot. With a collective nod, they agreed. The time had come to hunt. The next few hours were a whirlwind of preparation. The dogs scoured what was left of their hideout, gathering supplies, checking weapons, and mapping out their plan. Midnight led the charge, directing each of them with precision. There was no room for mistakes. As the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, the dogs were ready. The city loomed ahead of them, its dark corners hiding dangers they couldn't yet see. Midnight gathered the crew in a tight circle, their voice steady, their eyes filled with fire. All right, everyone. It's time to go hunting. Keep sharp. Heisenberg's out there, and we're not stopping until we find him. We're not just looking for a fight, we're looking to end this. The sun, still low in the sky, cast long shadows across the city as they set out. The echoes of the night still clung to the streets, and the looming threat of Heisenberg's retaliation hung heavy in the air. But the Gen Z dogs were ready. They'd fought their way through chaos before, and they'd do it again. As they moved deeper into the city, the tension only grew. The streets were quiet, but Midnight knew it was the calm before the storm. Heisenberg wasn't hiding. He was waiting. Watching. But the Gen Z dogs weren't the kind to back down. Whatever lay ahead, more raccoons, more chaos, even Heisenberg himself, they were ready. And as they disappeared into the city, they knew one thing for sure, the real battle had only just begun. Chapter 6, The Shadows Trail. The city was just beginning to stir as the Gen Z dogs moved through the streets, the early morning light casting long, eerie shadows on the pavement. Midnight led the way, their posture rigid, eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. The others followed, each lost in their own thoughts, preparing for the battle that lay ahead. Chip, ever the optimist, glanced around, flashing a grin. You know, we should do this more often. Urban adventures have a certain charm. Lola rolled her eyes, still annoyed from the previous night. Yeah, says the dog who's never had to fight off a rabid raccoon army before. Bella, her sunglasses perched perfectly on her snout, took in the view with a bored expression. I've been on worse benders, honestly. This is just another Tuesday. Dexter, unusually quiet, finally spoke up, his voice low and cautious. So, Midnight, how exactly are we supposed to find Heisenberg? It's not like he's gonna leave breadcrumbs pointing to his hideout. Midnight turned, their eyes dead serious. He's got a network, Dexter. Big players like Heisenberg don't operate alone. We start with his connections, the lowlifes and informants. Someone knows where he's hiding. Max, lugging a heavy bag of supplies, chimed in. And where do we find these connections? Midnight's expression hardened. We start where all dirty secrets start, in the gutter. Someone down there knows something. We'll shake the right trees until something falls out. They turned into the grimy underbelly of the city, where the buildings were crumbling, the streets were cracked, and the faces were as shifty as the shadows. Midnight led the group to a dingy, neon-lit diner, one that reeked of desperation and dirty deals. This is the place, Midnight said. The owner has ears on every corner. If anyone knows where Heisenberg's hold up, it's him. The bell above the door jangled as they stepped inside. The place was a dive, smelling of old grease and bad decisions. The cracked linoleum floors and grimy booths were occupied by a few unsavory characters who barely glanced their way. Behind the counter stood a burly bulldog with a grizzled face and an apron stained with years of regret. He looked up, unimpressed. "What do you want?" he growled, not bothering with pleasantries. Midnight stepped forward, their voice cool and controlled. "We need information. Heisenberg's been making moves, and we're looking to find him. We hear you know things." The bulldog's lip curled, one scarred eyebrow raising. "Heisenberg, huh? You've got some serious balls asking about him. What makes you think I've got the goods?" Midnight leaned closer, their voice dropping. "Because you're the one who always knows. And if we find Heisenberg, we end the mess he's been stirring. That's in your best interest too." The bulldog stared them down for a beat before grunting. "Fine. But it's gonna cost you. Information's never free, and you're asking about someone who doesn't like being found." Chip stepped forward, his usual cocky grin in place. "How much?" The bulldog threw out a number that made Dexter's eyes nearly pop out of his head. Without hesitation, Chip pulled out a wad of cash and slapped it on the counter. The bulldog's eyes gleamed as he pocketed the money, clearly enjoying the payout. "All right," he said, his voice gravelly. "Heisenberg's got a stash house down by the docks. Place is locked up tight, though. You'd better be careful if you're planning to poke around." Lola's eyes narrowed. "The docks? That's a tough area." Midnight nodded, already processing the new intel. "Thanks. We'll take it from here." As they stepped back into the street, Midnight quickly shifted into planning mode. The docks were notorious, home to smugglers, criminals, and worse. Heisenberg's stash house wouldn't be easy to crack. Max adjusted the straps on his gear. "We need a solid plan. No way we can just walk in there and hope for the best. We'd get torn apart." Midnight's expression was sharp. "We'll need intel on the place first. Scope it out, check the security. If we go in blind, we'll be dead before we hit the door." They spent the rest of the day staking out the docks, sticking to the shadows. Midnight's keen instincts led them to vantage points where they could observe the stash house without being seen. The place was a fortress, guarded by rough-looking dogs and other shady characters. Escape routes were minimal, and the defenses were tight. As the sun began to set, they gathered in a hidden corner near the docks, crouching over a crude map that Midnight had sketched out. "Here's how we play this," Midnight said, their voice low but commanding. "We'll approach from the north. There's a blind spot in their patrols. Chip and Max, you'll handle any security systems. The rest of us will deal with the guards." Chip pushed his sunglasses up, nodding. "Fireworks it is." "I'm ready." Lola cracked her knuckles, her grin fierce. "Just say the word. I'm itching for a fight." Bella took a swig from her flask, her gaze cool and calm. "Let's get this done quickly. The sooner we're out, the better." Dexter, trying to suppress his anxiety, swallowed hard. "I'll, stay close. Just don't let me get killed, all right?" Midnight smirked. "Stick with us, and you'll be fine." Let's move. It's time to take Heisenberg out of the shadows. With their plan in place, the Gen Z dogs crept toward the docks under the cover of night. The tension in the air was thick, and every creak, every distant sound seemed to echo louder. They moved like ghosts, determined and deadly. As they neared the stash house, the night grew colder, the air heavy with the promise of violence. Midnight's eyes flicked between the guards, counting their steps, timing their movements. Chip and Max slipped ahead, working quickly to disable the security systems without a sound. The others waited, every muscle coiled, ready to strike. This was it. They had come too far to turn back now. Heisenberg was close, and the moment of reckoning had finally arrived. Chapter 7, The Infiltration. The moon hung low over the docks, casting cold, eerie shadows on the grimy water as the Gen Z dogs crept through narrow alleyways, heading toward Heisenberg's stash house. The salty scent of the ocean mingled with the stench of old oil and decaying wood, adding to the heavy, oppressive air. The distant creaking of ships at the docks felt like an omen. Midnight led the way, their eyes locked onto the towering warehouse that loomed ahead. Chain-link fences topped with razor wire surrounded the place like a prison, and floodlights swept the yard at regular intervals. It was as impenetrable as a fortress, but they'd come too far to turn back now. Chip and Max stayed close to the back, hunched low as they worked quickly to disable the security systems. Max tapped into the warehouse's camera feed, the flickering images showing the layout of the interior. He handed the device to Midnight. "For guards inside," Midnight whispered. "We'll need to take them out quietly. If we make any noise, we'll be overrun with reinforcements." Chip flashed a thumbs up from where he crouched by the fence, carefully cutting through the wire. "Relax. I've got this. Once we're in, I'll handle the alarms. We'll have a window, just not a big one." Lola cracked her knuckles, her lips curling into a grin. "I'm ready to wreck shop. But I'll wait for your signal, Midnight. You're the boss." Bella leaned casually against a wall, swigging from her flask. "Let's get this over with. I've got a bottle of something stronger waiting for me." Dexter, shaking like a leaf, clung to his spot in the back. Silent. I trip over my own paws on grass. We're doomed." Midnight shot him a reassuring look. "Stick close, Dexter. We've practiced this. You'll be fine." With the hole in the fence large enough, the dogs slipped through one by one, their paws barely making a sound on the gravel as they hugged the shadows, keeping clear of the sweeping lights. Every step felt like a gamble. The warehouse loomed larger as they approached, its windows dark and foreboding. Midnight pressed her ear against the door, listening for any signs of movement. When she heard nothing, she nodded to Chip. He pulled out a small device and got to work on the lock, his paws moving with practiced ease. Within moments, there was a soft click, and the door swung open. The warehouse interior was dimly lit, filled with the acrid smell of chemicals and mildew. Stacks of crates lined the walls, while in the center of the room were tables covered in bags of suspicious white powder, definitely Heisenberg's stash. Midnight pointed to the guards stationed around the room. "Take them out quietly. No noise." Lola and Max crept toward the first guard, a bulky pitbull nodding off in his chair. Without a sound, Lola struck, a precise hit to the neck knocking him out cold before he had time to react. Meanwhile, Chip and Midnight targeted the second guard, a wiry Doberman pacing near one of the tables. Chip tossed a pebble to distract him, and as the guard turned, Midnight moved like lightning, taking him down with a swift blow to the head. Bella, less concerned with subtlety, grabbed a crowbar from a nearby table. She swung it hard at the third guard, a boxer too slow to react. His body hit the ground with a dull thud. Bella smirked, adjusting her sunglasses. But things went sideways when Dexter clumsily approached the fourth guard, a hulking German shepherd. The guard woke with a start, and the two tumbled into a silent but awkward scuffle. Dexter was holding on for dear life, barely managing to avoid getting slammed. Max stepped in, quickly subduing the guard with a chokehold, while Dexter scrambled to his feet, panting. "Thanks, man. That was way too close." Max grinned. "Next time, let me go first." With the guards neutralized, they gathered around a large desk at the back of the warehouse. Midnight sifted through the scattered papers, looking for any clue that would lead them to Heisenberg's location. "Got it," Midnight muttered, pulling out a crumpled map. "It shows all of Heisenberg's safehouses. He moves around a lot, but this one here, in the industrial district, looks like his next stop." Lola glanced over Midnight's shoulder, her eyes narrowing. "That place is gonna be a nightmare. Security's gonna be 10 times tighter than this dump." Midnight's eyes were cold. "Doesn't matter. We'll hit him where it hurts. But we can't screw this up. We need to be careful." Chip, always the wild card, pocketed a few small bags of powder. "You know, I could use these for some explosive upgrades. You never know when a bomb might come in handy." Dexter's face went pale. "Please no. No more bombs. I've had enough near-death experiences for one lifetime." Suddenly, Midnight's ears perked up. They froze, listening. Footsteps. "We've got company." The door burst open before anyone could react, and a squad of raccoons, heavily armed and mean-looking, stormed into the room. Leading them was a grizzled, scarred raccoon in a leather jacket, his eyes gleaming with malice. Lola grinned, baring her teeth. "Oh, hell yeah. Let's dance." Bella took a long, slow sip from her flask and tossed it aside. "Let's make this quick." Midnight raised a paw, signaling for the others to spread out. "No mercy. We end this." The raccoons advanced, snarling, but the Gen Z dogs were ready. The air crackled with tension as the two sides squared off. They had come too far to back down now. Heisenberg's empire was starting to crumble, and they would be the ones to deliver the final blow. The battle was about to begin. Chapter 8, Clash of Claws. The raccoon squad stormed into the warehouse with ruthless precision, their eyes gleaming with malice. Leather jackets creaked as they brandished makeshift weapons, rusty chains, jagged spears, and broken bottles ready to tear through flesh. Their leader, the grizzled, one-eared raccoon, snarled as he led the charge. The Gen Z dogs snapped into action. Midnight and Max led the assault, their movements swift and lethal. Midnight's lithe form slipped through the shadows, striking down raccoons with deadly precision, while Max bulldozed through their ranks, crushing anyone foolish enough to get close. Lola launched herself into the fray, her fists moving with brutal efficiency. She sent two raccoons flying with a powerful roundhouse kick, and without missing a beat, she knocked another out cold with a well-placed punch to the jaw. Bella, usually the laid-back one, swung a metal pipe with deadly accuracy, dropping any raccoons who dared approach. Meanwhile, Chip, ever the tinkerer, was busy setting up explosives. His paws moved fast, planting small devices around the warehouse as chaos erupted around him. Dexter, though still shaky, contributed by lobbying homemade smoke bombs into the fray, creating clouds of confusion to disorient the raccoon horde. The one-eared raccoon leader snarled orders, directing his troops toward Midnight. His eyes burned with hatred as he zeroed in on her, realizing she was the true threat. Midnight noticed the shift instantly. She broke off from the general fight, darting toward the leader, her eyes cold and calculating. The raccoon leader lunged, his claws flashing in the dim light. Midnight ducked, rolling out of the way just in time, before countering with a swift kick to his ribs. The impact sent him staggering back, but he was quick to recover. Hissing in fury, the leader launched himself at her again, his strikes more ferocious. Max, seeing the struggle, charged into the fight, tackling the raccoon leader with brute force. They hit the ground hard, but the raccoon wriggled free, scrambling to his feet with a vicious glare. Lola rushed in, throwing a series of hard punches, each one landing with bone-cracking force. The leader swayed, barely keeping his balance. Bella seized the moment. She swung her pipe with brutal precision, landing a heavy blow on the leader's head. The raccoon crumpled to the ground, unconscious but still twitching with residual anger. The remaining raccoons hesitated. Seeing their leader fall broke their resolve, but desperation fueled their charge. They threw themselves back into the fight, teeth bared and weapons swinging. Chip finished rigging the explosives, giving a quick nod to Midnight. Time to make our exit. The Gen Z dogs fought their way toward the door, cutting through the remaining raccoons. Midnight led the charge, weaving through the chaos like a shadow, her agility unmatched. Max followed close behind, clearing a path with raw strength. Dexter, heart pounding, managed to throw his final smoke bombs, filling the warehouse with thick, choking clouds. The raccoons stumbled and coughed, blinded by the haze, unable to chase after the retreating dogs. Lola and Bella brought up the rear, taking down any stragglers as they dashed through the exit. The cool night air hit their faces as they burst free from the warehouse, adrenaline still pumping through their veins. They regrouped in a nearby alley, catching their breath and taking stock of the situation. Midnight scanned the area, her eyes sharp, ears perked for any sign of pursuit. "That was intense," Bella said, wiping the sweat from her brow. "But we pulled it off." Chip, still riding the high of adrenaline, grinned. "We make a hell of a team, don't we?" Midnight's gaze remained focused, her voice steady. "We've taken down one of Heisenberg's strongholds, but this isn't over. His safe house is our next target. If we hit that, we'll cripple his entire operation." Max, still breathing heavily, looked over at Midnight. "What kind of defenses are we up against? It's not going to be easy." Midnight shook her head, her face grim. "The safe house is fortified. It'll be crawling with guards, and Heisenberg will know we're coming. We need a solid plan, and we need to be ready for anything." Lola cracked her knuckles, her grin fierce. "Good. I like a challenge." They moved quickly, slipping back to their makeshift headquarters. The night's battle had taken its toll, but they couldn't afford to slow down. Plans and strategies filled their heads as they began to prepare for the final confrontation with Heisenberg. As they settled in for a brief moment of rest, Echo approached Midnight. His face was determined, but there was still a flicker of fear behind his eyes. "I need to be part of this," he said quietly. "I've run from my fears long enough. I need to help." Midnight met his gaze, her expression softening for the first time all night. "We all have demons to face, Echo. You've shown you're ready. Tomorrow, we take down Heisenberg, for good." The Gen Z dogs nodded, their resolve firm. The battle at the warehouse had been brutal, but the real fight was still ahead. They knew what was coming, Heisenberg wouldn't go down easily. But they were ready. Together, they'd see this through to the end. As the night deepened, they rested, their minds filled with thoughts of the coming storm. Heisenberg's empire was about to crumble, and they were the ones who would bring it crashing down. Tomorrow, the final confrontation would begin. Chapter 9, the final countdown. The morning broke with an eerie calm, the kind that makes your skin prickle. The Gen Z dogs were up early, their faces hardened with grim determination. The safe house, Heisenberg's last stronghold, was a concrete fortress, fortified by years of criminal empire building. Midnight had tracked it down through a combination of relentless surveillance and favors pulled from the city's seediest informants. The city outside appeared eerily normal, a stark contrast to the chaos that was about to unfold. The dogs gathered their gear, checking weapons, supplies, and nerves. "We've got to be careful," Midnight said, her voice low but resolute. "Heisenberg's not expecting us to hit during the day, but that doesn't make this any less dangerous." Chip, ever the optimist, flashed a cocky grin. "Day or night, we've got this. Seriously, look at us, we're unstoppable." Dexter, nervously pawing at the ground, muttered, maybe we can skip the part where we almost get killed by raccoons again. That'd be great. Bella swigged from a small bottle of wine she'd stuffed in her bag, her eyes half-lidded but focused. And let's avoid blowing up anything this time. My liver's had enough surprises. Lola cracked her knuckles, her grin feral. I'm just here to finish this. No more games. Midnight nodded and led them toward the safe house, each step laden with tension. They moved through the quiet streets with precision, ducking into alleyways and staying in the shadows. As they neared the safe house, the air felt heavier, thick with the promise of danger. The safe house itself loomed ahead, an industrial bunker surrounded by barbed wire and high fences, guarded by Heisenberg's henchmen. Guard dogs patrolled the perimeter, their eyes sharp, their noses twitching in the breeze. Midnight raised her binoculars, assessing the layout. All right, here's the plan, she whispered. We split into 2 teams. Team A will create a diversion to pull the guards away from the main entrance. Team B will slip in from the back and disable the security system. Chip, Lola, and Bella were Team A, Midnight, Echo, and a still nervous Dexter made up Team B. Each team went over their roles, tightening every detail. Hearts pounded in unison as they set out. Team A moved first. Chip's gadgetry expertise came in handy as he rigged a series of distractions, loud bangs, mechanical sounds, and flashing lights, across the perimeter. The guards, confused and on high alert, scrambled to investigate, leaving the entrance vulnerable. As the guards scattered, Team B slipped through the back, keeping low and quiet. Midnight led the way, her movements fluid and silent as they crept through the cracks in the defenses. Max and Dexter followed, the tension between them electric as they pressed on. Inside, the safe house was a labyrinth of cold, sterile hallways and steel doors. The place reeked of corruption, and every corner felt more dangerous than the last. Midnight moved like a ghost, avoiding security cameras and motion sensors with expert precision. They made their way to the control room, where Dexter worked nervously to disable the security system. Meanwhile, Team A continued their diversion, drawing the guards further and further from the safe house. Lola's fists and Chip's chaotic devices kept the guards on their toes, while Bella, with a smug grin, kept the mayhem rolling with well-placed taunts and misdirections. Back in the control room, the lights on the security panel flickered and went dark. Dexter grinned, his paws still shaking. Got it. Security's down. Midnight signaled for the group to move. They slipped through the halls, undetected, and entered the heart of the safe house, a massive storage room filled with crates of illicit goods and weapons. In the center, a table stood covered in blueprints and maps, Heisenberg's entire empire laid out before them. Midnight's eyes narrowed as she sifted through the documents. This is it. We take out his supply lines, hit his main operations, and will cripple him for good. Max nodded, his eyes scanning the maps. We're going to need explosives for some of these locations. No way we can take them down quietly. Good thing I've got some extras, Chip said, rummaging through his pack with a mischievous grin. We're gonna blow this operation sky high. The group gathered as much intel as they could, destroying key supplies and sabotaging the safehouse's internal systems. But before they could finish, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. Midnight's ears twitched. They're coming back. We need to move, now. The Gen Z dogs worked quickly, gathering what they needed and making their way toward the exit. Team A regrouped with Team B, and together they slipped out, just as the guards returned to find chaos where their fortress once stood. In the cool alley outside, they paused to catch their breath. Bella wiped sweat from her brow and took a long drink from her flask. That was too damn close. Chip was still buzzing from the rush of it all. We make a hell of a team. What's next? Midnight, still scanning their surroundings, took a deep breath. We've crippled Heisenberg's operations, but this isn't over. He'll be coming for us next, and we need to be ready. Max crossed his arms, his eyes focused on the horizon. So what's the plan? We wait for him to strike. Midnight's eyes gleamed with resolve. No. We prepare. Heisenberg won't stop until one of us is gone, and it's not going to be us. The Gen Z dogs stood tall, tired but unbroken. They had struck a devastating blow to Heisenberg's empire, but they knew the fight was far from over. Heisenberg wasn't the type to let this slide, and their next confrontation would be their last. As the group settled in for a much-needed rest, Echo approached Midnight, his eyes filled with a new sense of determination. "I'm ready," he said. "Whatever comes next, I'm not backing down." Midnight gave him a nod, her voice softer than usual. "We all have something to fight for, Echo. Tomorrow, we will finish this." The Gen Z dogs prepared for the storm that was coming. Heisenberg would retaliate with everything he had left. But they were ready to face him head-on. They had come too far, fought too hard, to back down now. As the city around them hummed with the normalcy of daylight, the Gen Z dogs knew that the real battle was only hours away. Tomorrow, they would end it, for good. Chapter 10, New Faces and Old Foes. The sun lay below the horizon, casting long, blood-red shadows over the city as the Gen Z dogs gathered at their hideout. The raid on Heisenberg's safe house had been a success, but they all knew the battle was far from over. They sat around, bruised and battered, discussing their next move, when the creak of the door interrupted them. A small figure entered the room, swaggering in with an air of confidence that caught everyone's attention. The newcomer was a sleek, dapper wiener dog wearing a slightly askew bow tie and carrying a leather briefcase that gleamed under the dim lights. His entrance was as dramatic as his expression. "Good evening, ladies and gents," he said with a sly smile. "Hope I'm not crashing anything too important." The Gen Z dogs exchanged glances, unsure what to make of him. Midnight, still tending to a wound on her shoulder, straightened up, her eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" Midnight asked, their tone sharp. "And how did you find this place?" The wiener dog tipped his head with a smirk. "Name's Roscoe. I've got a talent for making grand entrances. And as for how I got here, let's just say I have my ways." He strolled further into the room, completely at ease. Chip, always the first to welcome new faces, flashed a grin. "Well, Roscoe, you've definitely got our attention. What brings you to our neck of the woods?" Roscoe placed his briefcase on the table with a thud and snapped it open, revealing a collection of high-tech gadgets, shiny tools, and an odd-looking device that blinked with small lights. "I've heard about your recent escapades. Figured you might need a little extra help from someone with my expertise." Bella, leaning back with her usual air of skepticism, raised an eyebrow. "Help? And what exactly do you offer?" Roscoe's smile widened. "Let's just say I specialize in unique solutions. I'm not in the business of giving away my goods for free, but I'm certain we can make an arrangement." Dexter peeked out from behind a pile of pillows. "And what makes you think we need your help?" Roscoe's eyes gleamed. "Because I've done my homework. After your little heist at Heisenberg's safe house, you'll need more than luck to get through what's coming next. And trust me, I've got just what you need." Midnight stepped closer, eyeing Roscoe with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "All right, show us." Roscoe pulled out a sleek, compact device. It was no bigger than a deck of cards, with a screen and several buttons. "This beauty can hack into any security system you come across. It's got a built-in EMP function for when things get tricky. Perfect for your line of work." Dexter's eyes lit up. "Now that is something we could use. How much?" Roscoe chuckled, shaking his head. "Oh, no cash necessary. All I want is a favor, a little job that requires discretion. I help you now, you help me later. Deal?" Lola grinned, her fists clenched with anticipation. I like the sound of this. What's the catch? Roscoe's expression stayed unreadable, his voice smooth. No catch. I give you the gear you need, you handle a small matter for me in return. I think you'll find our interests align quite nicely. Midnight, her gaze unwavering, studied Roscoe carefully. We don't make deals lightly. What exactly do you want from us? Roscoe's smile flickered, revealing a flash of something darker behind his polished demeanor. Let's just say, when the time comes, I'll call in the favor. Until then, consider this a token of our new partnership. He handed the device to Midnight, who took it without breaking eye contact. Fair enough, Midnight said, her voice cool as she passed the device to Dexter. But make no mistake, we'll be watching you closely. Roscoe gave an exaggerated bow. I wouldn't expect anything less. With that, Roscoe snapped his briefcase shut, tipped his bow tie, and strutted out the door as confidently as he had entered. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving the Gen Z dog standing in tense silence. Dexter turned the device over in his paws, a mischievous grin spreading across his face. Well, this just got interesting. Another player in the game. Bella, pouring herself another drink, sighed. As long as it doesn't involve blowing up half the city, I'm in. Lola, still fired up, chuckled. I don't know. Blowing up something might be fun. We'll see what this Roscoe is really about when the time comes. Midnight gathered the team around, her tone serious. We've got a new tool, and maybe a new ally, but that doesn't mean we can let our guard down. Heisenberg's not going to wait around. Whatever comes next, we need to be ready. The group nodded in agreement, their minds racing with thoughts of the future. They had faced their share of enemies, but there was something about Roscoe that left an uneasy feeling in the air. A charming smile didn't mean loyalty. As the night deepened, the Gen Z dogs settled in, tending to their wounds and readying their gear for what was sure to be another battle. Outside, the city hummed quietly, unaware of the storm brewing in its underbelly. The mystery of Roscoe and his favor hung over them like a shadow, adding another layer of tension already on the horizon. Midnight looked out at the city, their expression unreadable. They were getting closer to taking Heisenberg down, but new faces meant new dangers. One thing was clear, this war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The night air was thick with anticipation, each breath heavy with the knowledge that this was it, the moment they had all been waiting for. Heisenberg, the elusive mastermind who had turned their neighborhood into a cesspool of criminal activity, was about to face justice. The Gen Z dogs stood ready outside his concrete fortress, their shadows flickering under the dim streetlights. All right, Midnight said, their voice low and firm. This is the last push. We get in, we take him down, and we end this once and for all. Dexter glanced down at the device in his paw, a small, slick gadget wired to disable the fortress's power grid. This thing better work, he muttered. Hope I'm not running headfirst into a fortress lit up like a Christmas tree. You handle the tech. We'll handle the muscle, Echo growled, his eyes burning with a rare determination. Echo had been the quiet one, but tonight, he was all in. Heisenberg had been haunting him, and it was personal now. Lola, perched on a nearby rooftop with a bottle of gin tucked in her paw, gave a lazy grin. If you boys fuck this up, I swear, I'll make sure you go down in flames. But don't worry, we'll live stream it. Let's focus, Lola, Bella snapped, her usual Instagram-ready pose replaced by an icy, no-nonsense attitude. The sooner we take him down, the sooner I can stop worrying about getting shot in the face by meth squirrels. With a click, Dexter disabled the power grid. The fortress's lights blinked out, plunging the area into darkness. Let's go, Midnight barked. Inside, Heisenberg sat in his leather chair, staring at the monitors that had just gone black. So, it's finally happening, he murmured, stroking his scarred muzzle. Let's see if these dogs are worth the trouble. Heisenberg stood, his hulking form imposing as ever, and cracked his neck. "Send them in," he growled, his voice like gravel. From the shadows, his enforcers, vicious zoom eyes, amped up on whatever cocktail of chemicals Heisenberg had fed them, emerged, their green eyes glowing in the dark. The Gen Z dogs breached the fortress with precision. Dexter's gadgets got them past the electronic locks, while Midnight led the charge through the narrow halls, taking down guards with silent, lethal efficiency. But the deeper they got, the harder it became. "Shit!" Dexter yelped as Azumi lunged out of the darkness. Midnight responded in a flash, her teeth bared as she slammed the attacker into the wall. But more came, wave after wave of Heisenberg's loyal, drugged-up soldiers. "Fuck, we need to end this now," Dexter yelled, frantically working to open the final door to Heisenberg's lair. Echo, bloodied but fierce, growled. "I'll hold them off. Get to Heisenberg." The door burst open, and there he was. Heisenberg, larger than life, his eyes cold and calculating, scars crisscrossing his face like a map of war. He grinned when he saw Midnight and Chip enter. "So, the little underdogs finally made it," he sneered. "You think you've won? You've got no idea what you're up against." Chip fired back, "We know exactly what we're up against. We're just not afraid of you anymore." Midnight stepped forward, her stance lethal. "It's over, Heisenberg. Your empire's crumbled. Your enforcers are done. You've got nothing left." Heisenberg laughed, dark and full of malice. "You think I'm done? You think this is over because you shut down a few operations? This whole city is mine. And if I go down, I'm taking you all with me." With a flick of his paw, Heisenberg revealed a detonator strapped to his chest. "One press, and this whole place goes up in flames with us all in it." The room froze. Chip's eyes darted to Midnight, and for a split second, doubt flickered. But then Midnight smiled. It was a cold, confident smile. "You're not going to press that button," she said softly. Heisenberg's grin faltered. "You think I'm bluffing?" Midnight's eyes gleamed. "No, I just know you're not that stupid." Before Heisenberg could react, Echo appeared from the shadows, silent as death. In one swift motion, Echo lunged, knocking Heisenberg to the ground, the detonator flying out of his paw. The two of them tumbled across the floor, teeth bared, growling like rabid animals. Heisenberg fought viciously, but Echo was fueled by something more, years of pent-up rage, fear, and the need to finally be free of this shadow. When the dust settled, Heisenberg lay on the floor, defeated, his empire in ruins. Echo stood over him, breathing hard. Midnight approached, cold and calm. "It's over." Heisenberg spat blood, glaring up at them with pure hatred. "This city doesn't belong to you. It never will." "No," Echo said, stepping forward. "It belongs to all of us." And with that, the Gen Z dogs walked out, leaving Heisenberg behind in the rubble of his own making. As the crew gathered outside, the dawn began to break, casting light over the shattered fortress. The fight was over. They had won. Lola stretched lazily, taking a swig from her flask. "Well, that was fun. What now?" Midnight glanced back at the ruins. "Now we rest. But something tells me this city's always going to need us." Dexter, trembling slightly, nodded. "I'm going to hang on to this." Putting away the device from Roscoe. Chip chuckled. "You did good, Dex. We all did." As the sun rose, still dead lying below the city, the Gen Z dogs stood together, united in their victory, knowing that whatever came next, they could handle it. Together.